move on to modern times, it does feel like people wouldn't be poisoned anymore, right? I mean, because it has got to be a lot harder. But no, even into the mid and late 20th century, there were serial poisoners. That doesn't mean that there haven't been any in this century. It just means that this is where the end of my research is. So up first, we have Dorothea Puente, and I call her the landlady from hell.
Oh, I know this chick.
Oh, okay. So do you want to share with us a little bit about what she did?
No, I totally, she would take in homeless men and she would give them a place to live, right? She had a boarding house.
Yeah, so she would take in not just homeless men, Monica, but like disabled people and elderly people.
Yes.
Yeah, like anybody who needed help, she was taking them in.
And she was known as a woman who would do good because she had this house and she was just letting them live there for free, supposedly. But she was also stealing their social security checks. And if their families checked in on them, she would tell them that they went to Mexico and they were living happily in Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But did you know this? That in 1982, she was accused of drugging a boarder and stealing his pension. And then she was sentenced to 5 years in prison for doing this. But then they let her out 3 years later, and she would have parole agents who would come in and investigate her house and just make sure that she wasn't taking elderly people's checks. But she was doing that.
Yeah, she totally was. And she even hid some of the bodies on her own property.
Oh, yeah. One of the boarders who was a schizophrenic, he went missing, and then his social worker went to check on him. And then they discovered 7 bodies in her yard. And get this, and I'm sure you know this, but our listeners don't. When the investigation initially began, she wasn't considered a suspect, even though she had been in prison for drugging somebody and stealing his checks. But let's not think that maybe she did this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is a whole entire podcast just about her.
Then, like, when she got busted, like, she ran off to LA and, like, immediately goes to a bar and is, like, trying to, I don't know what, but an elderly man with a pension. I don't know if she's trying to seduce him, befriend him, whatever. And he, like, recognized her and called the police.
Based on the podcast that I listened to, she was talking with, like, let's say a detective, right? And she asked if she could go into a hotel to get coffee. And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? So she goes into the hotel and she goes out the back door, and that's how she escaped.
Oh my gosh. I just feel like the police and authorities really dropped the ball with this woman. Like, really, if you have parole agents going in there this whole time and she's like got bodies buried, I mean, good grief. She reminds me of a Victorian woman named Amy Archer Gilligan, and she essentially did the same thing, only she ran like a proper nursing home. I don't know how proper it was back then. But, and she would take the life insurance money and poison the elderly. These people are sick.
Crazy. Oh, who is this? The giggling granny?
Yeah, so up next we have the giggling granny, Nannie Doss. Now, I don't usually have sympathy for a lot of these people, but with her, I felt like there was just something not right about her. I mean, look at these photos of her. So she did suffer brain injury as a child, and it's noted that it completely changed her personality. So I think that possibly that played into her choices later and why she is smiling like a weirdo here when she is like in custody. I would really love to do an episode sometime during True Crime on the early childhood of many of these killers, because it is absolutely fascinating. Yeah, a lot of these women on here came from abuse, but not all of them. But maybe just not documented, right? Very interesting.
Monica, how many times was she married?
She was married 5 times, and she confessed to killing 4 of those husbands, but authorities believe that she killed other family members.
So I see victims 11.
Yeah, so those would be the other family members. So like a little newborn granddaughter that she killed with a long hat pin.
What? Oh my God.
Yeah, and her grandson died by asphyxiation a few months later while in her care. And her sister and her mother died suddenly while in her care as well. First of all, said she did nothing to her family, but did admit to 4 of the 5 husbands. And so they said, well, why did you do this? And she said that it was not for insurance money. And she said simply, and I quote, "I was searching for the perfect mate, the real romance in life."